Three Kalispell residents are running for mayor as incumbent Mayor Mark Johnson decided to forego re-election. I sat down with the candidates to ask some questions community members are raising. In no particular order, one of the questions were, what do you think of impact fees, specifically police and fire impact fees? Do you approve of them? Elaborate on your reason.
So I differ from the other two candidates in this race on impact fees. A number of years ago, the City Council voted to cut developer impact fees in half and add to already rising water and sewer rates to pay for that subsidy for the developer. I was the only member, one of the few members of council who voted no on that, insisted that new development should pay for the impacts it's having on our infrastructure. So I've been very adamant about it. I'm the only one in this race who has taken that position, and it applies to the police and fire impact fees as well. That was a recent vote we had. I pushed to have the police and fire impact fees increase to the level recommended so that new development is paying for its impact on our emergency services. Unfortunately, the majority of council did not agree and voted to keep the impact fees the same, and I disagreed with that strongly.
Absolutely approve of impact fees. There should, if you're creating a new development, and that new development is going to have an impact on the community, particularly police and fire, then that new development needs to pay for the impact it's having on police and fire. All of those costs are on that left side of the equation that we talked about earlier. Those are all the individual costs that eventually go in to equal what a rental rate is, what a home price is. So we have to balance out the impact with what our goal is to achieve for making housing more affordable as well.
So out of the entire council currently, and out of the three candidates running for mayor, I'm the only one that actually served on the Impact Fee Advisory Committee. So that was my first board that I served on here in Kalispell. And unfortunately, what that board does is it calculates the maximum amount that we can charge for impact fees and then presents that to the council. People don't understand that. They think that they come with a recommendation of where we should be at, but it's totally up to the council where that sits. I do not like impact fees. Impact fees will pay for buildings. They'll pay for large equipment like fire ladder trucks, but they won't pay for things like police cars. And the biggest thing that they don't pay for is personnel. You cannot use them to hire people. So if we need more policemen, if we build them a new building and there's no policemen to put in there, it's ridiculous, right? The impact fees are not a good way to tackle the increase in need of services for fire and police. So that's why I was very happy when the council decided to cut impact fees, because the other piece of impact fees, that this is just the plain truth. Developers don't pay impact fees. Builders don't pay impact fees. The home buyer or the renter ends up paying those impact fees. They're passed on to the end user. So by lowering impact fees, we actually helped to lower housing and rental prices here.
Another question was, what ways do you think community safety can improve? Whether it's traffic, sidewalks, theft, or increase of crime.
Yeah, we're a growing community, and any community that's growing so rapidly, we're going to have that growth of related crime, and so it's important to be on top of it. We did pass the emergency levy to allow us to hire 8 additional police officers and also firefighters. I went door to door with the firefighters union to educate the voter about that levy because I felt it was really important for our community, and I'm glad the community supported it so we could staff up and try to keep up with that need within our emergency services. So that's one thing we're trying to stay on top of. And in terms of other safety issues like street safety, I really believe that our street design standards need to be updated to enhance street safety. That's not only ensuring that we have traffic calming measures. We hear a lot at council about these neighborhood streets where people are driving too fast, and being able to implement calming measures on those streets to ensure that neighborhood streets are safe for kids and everyone in that neighborhood is really important. But it's also ensuring that in neighborhoods where we are missing sidewalks, that we identify funding to get in there and put those sidewalks in place and make other improvements to ensure that our existing neighborhoods have safe streets.
Public safety is the #1 role of any local government, so it has to be at the top of our list. When we passed the safety levy last year, that put more officers on the streets for police officers, and also added more firefighters, more first responders, EMTs, and gave us the ability to expand that footprint to add a 3rd station for firefighting services. What it didn't do is address really the root causes. We can't police our way out of the safety issues that we have currently. What we need to do now is go back and look at some of the root causes. The #1 root cause of majority of the homelessness that we're experiencing and the increase in crime is that we are lacking severely in this community in mental health and drug alcohol addiction crisis support facilities. We lost all of those in 2020 after COVID. We started to see a downturn in that after 2017 when the legislature made some changes to the budget, but we haven't had anything since 2021. Thankfully, on a state level, there's some changes that are going to allow for a new facility to open up. I believe there's 6 beds in that facility. It's not enough. We need our city government to advocate heavily and immediately for getting mental health and addiction services back into our city.
So I think the community spoke up very loudly when the emergency levy went out, and they all agreed to tax themselves to add fire and police. I don't know if people realize it, but just we've been adding policemen and we've been adding firefighters along with that go right into that program that they chose to implement. And not this last council work session, but the last council session, we actually added 9 firefighters in one big group. I mean, that is that just shows the impact of what's coming in the future. So our patrols for the police are going to be able to increase. We're going to have more personnel. It's going to be more organized because there's going to be a great chain of command for them to follow, and there'll be people that are responsible for different shifts and things like that. So it's all good stuff as far as policing is concerned. The problem is, so we've grown quite a bit in a very short amount of time. As you grow population, the crime statistics just go up commensurate with the growth in population. So even though there is more crime now, the percentage of crime isn't larger. It seems like it is because there's more crime, but there's also more people. So that's, every time we do something that is aimed toward public safety, every public safety or every public security implementation has a commensurate loss in liberty and freedom that goes with it. We agree to implement this safety measure, and at the same time we're reducing our freedom to go along with that. So the first thing I think about is the loss of freedom worth the possible gain in security? And one of the things that I have a big problem with security planning and security implementation is the government then needs to go back and look and see if it was effective. Because if they implement something at the cost of our freedoms that helps us out and is making a good impact, lowering crime, that kind of thing, then it's worth it. But if you don't revisit it, you don't know if what you implemented was worth it or not. And so that's one of my biggest gripes with implementing security is you don't know if the security is working until you look back and see what was the effect of what you did. So I'm a big fan of going back and reviewing these and say, are these effective? Because if they're not effective, we should remove those plans if they're not increasing our safety here in Kalispell.
Another question the candidates got asked was, what do you think of the population growth here in the Valley?
Yeah, it's been an explosion of growth. I mean, we've all seen it since the pandemic, since 2020, just a real big influx of people coming into our community. And people should be clear that, we can't prevent that, right? People move here not because we approve some subdivision, but because they love the natural beauty, they have family here, they got a job here, reasons that are unrelated to the housing. If we don't build the housing to meet that demand, then prices skyrocket, as we've seen. So we have a real growth in population. The important thing is that we manage the growth as carefully and appropriately as we can. I want to see more infill development and less sprawl. That includes making sure that we get the development along the Parkline Trail that our plan envisions through good design standards that I've pushed on council and will continue to advocate for. I want to see rezoning reforms to ensure that we get a mix of housing types in our community to meet that demand. And then when we do develop new developments on the outskirts of our community, I want to make sure they're complete neighborhoods. And by that I mean not only that we have a variety of housing types out there to meet the different needs of our community, but also that we have some commercial opportunities within those neighborhoods, so folks aren't all jumping in their car and getting on the same roads to go to the same destinations, which contributes to traffic congestion. If folks can meet some of their commercial needs within their own neighborhood, that helps on traffic congestion. It makes for a nicer neighborhood that folks want to be in, and just completes it for folks living there. It enhances livability of those neighborhoods.
I guess none of us should be surprised at how the population has grown because, I mean, it's a beautiful place. And I know when I moved here that it was evident to me that every cell in my body said there's no other place I'd rather be. And even when times got tough for my husband and I and our family after the housing crash, we decided to stay here because we love Kalispell so much. So am I surprised? No. Does it get kind of uncomfortable when things change and when there's too many people at the stoplight and why are all these people at my store? Yes, it does. It's also can be really terrifying for folks. So all in all, like what's my assessment of it would just be, wow, we have a lot to grow through.
This is something that native Montanans understand easier and faster than people that move here. Now, I don't have anything against people that move here because they're moving here for a reason. They like our culture, and I understand that. They like the amenities here, they like our culture, so they move here. The problem is Montanans want to keep everything like it is. We like the simplistic life. We like to be left alone. And the problem with sudden increases in population is you feel like things are out of control. You don't understand why some things are being implemented, why things are happening, and you don't like that there's people that come into your community that aren't already part of your culture. And the only way to really combat this, because we're not going to be able to stop what I call freedom of movement. People have the ability to move and live anywhere they want in the United States. We're not going to stop that freedom. But what we can do is when people do move here, it's important that we go and speak with them and bring them into our culture as fast as possible so that they're not sitting out there on an island practicing the culture from wherever they came from, right? A cultural shift is the thing that people kind of fear the most, and it's inevitable as you grow. Unfortunately, we can't put the genie back in the bottle here. It has, the entire United States has discovered that Kalispell is an amazing place to live, and there's no taking that back. People are going to continue to look here to want to move here. It's really important to us that we strive as a community to keep our culture and to bring them into our culture so that there's not a big shift from what we knew when we were growing up.
Another question asked was, is there a way to combat the high rates in rental cost and affordable housing?
Yeah, housing affordability has been the biggest challenge our community has faced in the recent years. It's been the top priority of mine on the City Council for the past 6 years, representing downtown Kalispell, and I have a real plan to address it. We've obviously have a supply and demand issue, and and City Council has done a lot, as everybody knows, in terms of increasing that supply relative to demand. And I think that we may finally have caught up, and we could see the effects of that in the coming years with rental prices and housing prices stabilizing because of that supply coming online. But it's not enough. We need to do more. There are folks who won't be able to afford even market rate housing, and so we need to partner with our nonprofit housing providers and see what they need to be able to build income-based affordable housing. One of the things I'd like to do is appoint a citizen advisory committee to develop an affordable housing plan based on best practices of similar-sized communities. And one of the things I'd like to see in that plan is that the city utilizes vacant surplus city property and make that available to our nonprofit providers for them to build income-based affordable housing. I'll add to that too, one other thing. I think we need tighter restrictions on short-term vacation rentals. Currently, our code allows for a doubling of short-term vacation rentals in our community, and that takes housing away from our local residents. And so I want to tighten those restrictions to make sure we don't see a doubling of short-term vacation rentals in our community.
It's not fine. There's a lot of different aspects to affordable housing. And when I speak about affordable housing, I'm not talking about a government-run program. What I'm talking about is that, and a better way to say would be housing affordability. So whether it's a rental or a purchase, to get to that final rent amount, that's the right side of the equation. Everything that happens before that equal sign is an area where we as a community need to make some changes. Some of that has to do with zoning. Some of it has to do with development standards. Some of that has to do with property taxes. Some of that has to do with impact fees. But a lot of it has to do with the red tape, the processes that a builder goes through to create new housing. New housing sets the bar for how resale housing is priced. Resale housing sets the bar for how owners price their rentals. And new housing then is really, we can get we will have the most effective impact on reducing rental costs by dealing with some of our infrastructure issues, by dealing with our red tape, by dealing with process inefficiencies at our city level.
The answer to that is simply one word: competition. We have to get to the competition point. We're not there. We started off during this crisis at 1% available housing. And I have a different view, I think, of this than a lot of other people on council, because I'm the only one on the current council that actually rents their house. So I'm a renter like the vast majority of Kalispell is. And during the COVID years, when housing prices skyrocketed, we actually lost the house. The house that we were renting was sold by the homeowner, and we had 30 days to get out. This is during the time when there was nothing available. And to make matters worse, I had to find a house in Ward 4 or I couldn't continue on the city council. So I know what it's like to be under that pressure and to be really concerned with not only the price of housing, the availability of housing, but to know that I had like this 30-day period of time where I had to find some place to live. That was super stressful. So I do understand what a lot of people are going through out there. Unfortunately, it takes a lot longer to dig ourselves out of this issue than it did for us to get into it. We got into it because of the huge influx of people over the COVID years. The way to get out of it, the only way, long-term, sustainable way to get out of this, to actually lower prices, is to get to where free market research has shown competition really kicks in, which is at 6% available housing. So at 6% and higher, the higher you go with available housing, the more competition there is, the more rental prices and housing prices drop. I'm trying to get us to at least that 6%. That's one of my goals, because I want my kids to be able to live here. My kids can't afford to live here today. They're all grown. They can't. 2 of them live in Denver right now. 1 of them still lives with us. He's the smart one because he's not actually paying rent. And he's looked around to try to move out in this area, and he just can't do it. So I understand what we're going through here for the rental industry. I understand that it's also heavily tied into the housing ownership industry. And I want to get us to that 6%. And in fact, if the builders want to continue building after that, it's even better for us, because the more available housing there is, the lower the prices are going to be, because people have to compete for your business.
One other question was, when it comes to Main Street, do you think there needs to be improvement?
Yeah, we need to revitalize our Main Street, make sure that it's a business-friendly environment. One of the biggest challenges is the noise and congestion of traffic. The Main Street plan is now off the table. The federal funding that we were looking at for that plan is gone, and so that's off the table. I know a lot of people are concerned about it. But that's kind of no longer an issue, at least for the foreseeable future. So we need to work with the community to identify ways to tackle the issue of congestion and noise in our downtown, to make it an enjoyable space for the public to be there and to shop in our downtown businesses. One of the things that will be needed is to improve that intersection of Highway 93 and the bypass, so that folks that don't need to go downtown have a very clear instruction to take the bypass instead. We also need to increase our population in the downtown area, so that we have more folks who are shopping downtown because that's their neighborhood. And one of the things I want to do is make sure that we have the design standards in place along the Parkline Trail to really realize the vision for the Parkline Trail as a vibrant destination of retail and residential housing along there. Our most recent development along the Parkline Trail was a parking lot, and that's not going to cut it in terms of revitalizing our downtown. Right. So we also need to improve infrastructure downtown. We have the west side of Main Street that has troubles getting the fire suppression they need because of the connection to the water line is very expensive. So identifying ways, state, federal funding sources perhaps, that we can tap into to help make those connections, so that we can have businesses thriving and revitalized there on the west side of Main Street.
When we adopted the Main Street Safety Action Plan in August of 2024, it was developed by a task force. There's a lot of input. There were engineers who put information into that. There were stakeholders, but the people who eventually didn't like that plan weren't included in that process from the start. They had opportunities to be included, but they weren't, because that's life. We as a city have to decide what we want our Main Street to be. We as a city have to decide what we want our downtown to be, what we want our core area to be. A plan is needed in order for us to take any action. A plan that's going to have effective action, a plan that's going to meet everyone's needs, has to be a plan that all the people, all the stakeholders are involved in. So, back to your original question, what do we do about Main Street? Yes, I think improvements need to be made to Main Street, not so much for today, but certainly for the future. If we don't address the infrastructure issues on Main Street, we will lose our downtown. As long as we have a major highway running through the middle of our downtown, we are unable to deal with any infrastructure issues on Main Street. We have to address that. Downtown also includes First Avenue West, First Avenue East, and lots of streets, even into Second Avenue West. So Main Street, I think, talking about Main Street and especially focusing on a moot issue of 2 lanes on Main Street is it's just a waste of time. There's no way that we can put 2 lanes on Main Street while it is a active highway. No one wants that. That would create a huge traffic backlog. That would create massive safety issues. No one wants that, especially not me. What I do want to see is for us to put together a plan so that we can move forward and continue to revitalize our downtown, the buildings, the businesses, and the places for us to all gather.
One of the big things we hear about is the water along Main Street. So the city has delivered the water necessary to Main Street. The problem is that it's delivered on one side of Main Street. So the businesses on the other side of Main Street have to either tear up the highway to get their pipe extended into the main, or they have to tunnel under it with this new technology that's really expensive. So both of those things are expensive, and unfortunately, they're only expensive for the businesses and the buildings that are on one side of Main Street. So there is sufficient infrastructure there. The planning went well, and it's there. The problem is that it's too expensive for the average business downtown to tie into those lines. So there's plenty of domestic water on both sides of the street. The problem is the fire prevention water, so for sprinkler systems and that kind of thing. That's only really accessible on one side of the street. So if you want to have apartments on the second and third floor of your building downtown, you have to tie into that for water suppression systems. And that is where the big controversy about the infrastructure comes from. So there are things we're already looking at on council and how we can help solve that problem, like doing every 4 blocks or so we could extend that main over and cap it so that people can tie in easier. So there are things that we're talking about on council to fix that. The answer is not to rip up Main Street and put a whole new water main on the other side of the street, because there's one like 70 feet away, right? That's redundant money that we'd be spending. So that infrastructure piece, I wanted to also call out that the Downtown Safety Action Plan did not address the infrastructure at all. It's only public safety. It only has to do with the safety of pedestrians on Main Street. So that plan was all centered on that. But here's the big thing, okay? We went through 3 years. So the plan was developed and started in 2017. It was adopted in 2023. Over that time, with the exception of 2020, in 2021, 2022, and 2023, we had multiple public engagements with our consultants, the city staff, and the people of Kalispell. And all of the people that not all of the people, but the vast majority of the people that participated in that were for the plan. So there's a perception on council that people were for this plan. When we suddenly got to the point where we were actually looking at funding the plan by going after a federal grant, it became extremely clear to me that the vast majority of the public was vehemently against the plan, mostly due to the lane reduction from 4 lanes to 2 lanes. I completely understand that, and it's my job as a nonpartisan elected official at the city to implement the will of the people. And the people didn't want this, so I voted against funding it. I think that's a difference between me and the other 2 candidates running for this office. One has since kind of flip-flopped on the issue, but all we had in public record prior to this was them supporting the plan fully. And that's kind of one of the things that I'm kind of concentrating on with this, because it's become such a premier issue with this race. And I just want the people to know that it doesn't really matter what I think about the plan. I'm going to present it to the people of Kalispell. And if they don't want it, then we either have to drop it completely, or we have to do a lot more education to bring people over to see our side of the plan, right? And if we can't do that, then we just don't implement it. That's what we're supposed to do. There's a difference between being elected into a nonpartisan position and being elected into a partisan position. In a partisan position, you can concentrate not only on being a representative of the constituents that brought you there, but also you're expected to push a party platform. People just expect that. That's just normal. In a nonpartisan position at the city level here, we don't have that political piece that's attached to us. We're nonpartisan. We are supposed to be only centric on the community. So that's why majority should rule in these cases, because we should only be implementing things that the city and the citizens actually want.
And my final question for all candidates was, with ballots being in the mail and voters being able to finally cast their vote, is there anything you want the Kalispell community to know?
Knocking doors, talking to voters, fiscal responsibility is a top priority for them. And again, I have the record on the City Council to show my commitment to fiscal responsibility. One of the issues that came up during my time on council was a proposal for a luxury hotel on Main Street and an associated parking garage. And the plan, the deal, was for the city to fully reimburse the developer of the luxury hotel for the construction of the parking garage, even though he got guarantees to half the parking spaces in that parking garage. I voted no on that because I believe that the developer, the hotel developer, should pay for half the cost of the parking garage since he got guaranteed half the parking spaces in that facility.
There are a lot of people who don't know that there is an election going on. Our local elections have a larger impact on our lives than any national election ever will. I want people to know that the ballots are in the mail. I want people to know that you have a choice, and I want people to be informed with all the facts, not the social media hubbub, but the facts of what each of us candidates is looking to do. And for me, I'm looking to lead Kalispell into this next chapter, to build on the fantastic leadership that we have had and move forward in a way that's going to help us be a thriving, vibrant community.
I would just want to reiterate to them, I'm one of you. I'm like the average Kalispell Joe. I hunt, I fish, that's why I live here. I love the area. I chose to live here. I grew up in Great Falls on the Central Plains. I wanted to be where lakes were because I love lake fishing, so that's why I chose Kalispell. Kalispell has been very good to me, and I love this place. That's why I'm on City Council, because we hardly get paid anything at all. It's pretty rough up there because no matter what decision you make, probably at least 30% of the population is against that decision, right? So it's a rough place to be at times. The one thing that I just want to let people know for sure, that my guiding principles are the United States Constitution and the Montana Constitution. And specifically the Bill of Rights in the U.S. Constitution I concentrate on very heavily, because government's actual role, the role that is the highest, the role that we need to do more than anything else, is protect your liberties. So protect your freedoms. And if you go back and look at our founding documents, if you look at the letters that the founders sent back and forth to each other after the Constitution was implemented, it's clear that that was the primary focus of the government. So I take that really seriously. So I apply everything that comes to me against the Constitution, especially against the Bill of Rights. So the First Amendment, the Second Amendment are super important to me. And one amendment that is extremely important to me also is the Fourth Amendment, your privacy. And that's the one that's being stepped on the most these days. And I'd like to read just what the Montana Constitution has to say about your right to privacy. The Montana Constitution says the right of individual privacy is essential to the well-being of a free society and shall not be infringed without the showing of a compelling state interest. Which means that their job at the Montana level, their job at the county level, their job at the municipal level is to ensure that you have individual privacy so that we can keep our other freedoms along with that. And I think this is a very powerful statement. I think this is one of the most powerful paragraphs in the Montana Constitution. I love this. This is something I think we need to concentrate on more.
Find more details on the candidates for Kalispell's mayoral race in this article on our NBC Montana homepage.